Well, thank you for your presence. Great to be with you. I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12, we're looking at verse 19. About 3 Saturday nights ago, we dealt with this particular passage. And, of course, we've been building and walking through chapter 12 together for the last however long. And we're continuing in that, so we're picking up where we left off, and we want to look at verse 19. Matthew's giving us a beautiful picture of Jesus. It's just an overwhelming picture as he paints this great scene. And it's out of prophecy. He's given two illustrations, of course, in Matthew chapter 12 about the person and character of Jesus. And this, how all of that is fulfilled in this particular passage, that is, this passage out of Isaiah. And so as you move into this, it's the longest, by the way, prophecy that is given to us in Matthew. And it's just, he just paints this marvelous picture of who Jesus is. And frankly, what has happened to me is, as I've read through this and studied this particular prophecy, I have had increased within me an overwhelming desire to be like Him. And I know to be like Him, I'm going to have His nature. It's not a matter of imitating Him, or it's not a matter of doing stuff that He did. It's not a matter of going around and dressing like He dressed, or talking like He talked, or it's a matter of nature. That what's in Him that makes Him like He is, I want that in me, so that'll make me like He is. And that's the only chance I've got in the whole thing. Verse 19, we'll start at verse 18, which is the beginning of the prophecy. Behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him. He will declare justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. The word quarrel there is very, very strong, and we talked about this before, but I want to remind you of it. The word quarrel is the idea, sometimes it's translated wrangle, dispute, argue, those kinds of things. It has the idea, actually, down underneath it all, of defending oneself. And you'll notice every time there's a quarrel, it's usually over defending oneself. The argument usually is about, well, I'm not, I didn't, I. It's usually about I. And quarreling always seems to be a defending of oneself. In fact, in some sense, it becomes a judicial term of before a court and defending yourself. So the idea of quarreling here, again, keep that in mind, always spills out of the self-nature. So what you've got is a contrast going on between who Jesus is, and then there's another group represented in the chapter, and you've got a contrast going on between these two. It's the nature of Jesus who never quarrels, and it's the nature of self that's always quarreling. It's the nature of Jesus that's never disputing, and it's the nature of self that's always in some kind of dispute. There's an attitude that's produced out of all of this. And of course, I thought about just talking about the attitude, but you know, you can try to adjust an attitude. You can bite your lip and, well, I need an attitude check, and you can curb your attitude. But attitudes only come out of nature, which is who you are inside. So the whole purpose of the passage is that something needs to take place deep in the internal of my life that will change me in my nature, that I must somehow, God must come, Jesus must infiltrate the depth of my nature and bring me into such a flow of who He is that my attitude is like His. So it's not a matter of starting with the attitude, it's a matter of starting with the nature, which will affect the attitude, which will do something with the actions. We've pounded this, and just going to keep pounding it, I guess, the idea that sin is not a deed. Oh, it is a deed. Sin is a deed. But it's not just a deed, because the deed of sin is always produced by the nature. So what we're really after is not getting rid of sin as a deed. What we're after is getting rid of sin nature, which is self. And that's very, very difficult. I wish it wasn't that way, frankly. I wish that sins were just deeds. Then I could say, I could have a list of them. I could say, oh, I don't do that anymore. I could adjust my activities so I could be sinless, would have no deeds of sin. That would really be great. But you see, it isn't that way. Because sin is not contained within the deed. Sin is contained within the action of, within the nature or the attitude or the flow of the nature in the deed. So it isn't the deed, the action of the deed that makes a thing a sin. It's where it comes from and what produces it in your life. That's really important, folks. Because you see, that means anything could be a sin. Well, I come to the altar. Well, good. But why did you come to the altar? Well, I was putting on a show so that everybody would see, and I'm conning everybody. Well, that's right out of self, which makes coming to the altar a sin. Isn't that interesting? So you would think the greatest act in the world of coming to an altar and kneeling and praying would be, but it could be a sin. Preaching could be a sin because you could preach out of yourself. Singing could be a sin because you sing out of yourself. See, anything could be a sin because it isn't about the action of the deed that makes a sin deed wrong. It's what produces it. That's what he's dealing with in this chapter. And it's really significant because, again, he sets up this contrast between the nature of self and the nature of Christ and what's spilling in and through Jesus and produces him over against what's spilling in and through the nature of self. Now, I got way too much material for the time we have together, so I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do. But as you get into this chapter 12, here's what's so interesting. He represents these two natures by, obviously, Jesus, which is the nature of the Spirit. But then he picks out a group, Matthew does, to represent the nature of sin or the nature of self. Now, you would think that he'd pick out, the murderers. They would have the nature of self, and you'd pick them out as an example. You'd think he'd pick out the alcoholics. Now, that would be, but he doesn't pick out the murderers, the drunkards, the guys who swear. He doesn't pick them out as an example. You know who he picks out as an example? Religious people. The people that pray. Oh, the Sadducees and Pharisees. Isn't that hilarious? He picks out the people who memorize Scripture. What? He picks out the people who go to prayer meeting. What? He picks out those people to represent the heart of the nature of sin, contrasted with Jesus. That's really surprising. I think it's surprising. Because he's trying to tell us that sin is not a deed. It's not contained within the deed that you do. It's contained within the nature that produces the deed. So if you're thinking at all, you know then that what we need to focus on is not quitting the deed, because you could quit the deed and still have the nature and you wouldn't be any place. That what we got to do is go to the heart of sin, which is the nature itself, which is what the chapter's all about. Now, look, for instance, at these sections, and we've gone over these, but verse 12, or chapter 12, verse 1, down through verse 8 is the first section. And we're calling it mercy versus sacrifice. And it's an interesting section, and as you look at it, of course, you know what the scene is. Jesus and his disciples are walking along. They're picking grain on the Sabbath day, and they're eating it. They're rubbing it between their hands, and they're eating it. They're not stealing. This was permissible, as you remember, by Jewish law. You couldn't get a sickle and go in and harvest. That would be stealing. But this is walking along. You're hungry. You just pick some grain. You rub it between your hands. You eat it. Hey, it's okay. So you're permitted to do that, but not on the Sabbath day. You cannot do it on the Sabbath day. So the Pharisees are all bent out of shape, saying, look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath day. And then Jesus gives a little discourse in answer to that. So here is a group of people, Pharisees, who are so stuck on their Sabbath day law that they do not care about the needs of people. So I want to ask you two questions. And hey, I don't know how to do this. I put them up here so you can see them. But I want you to think about this. What is it? Here's what I want you to think about. What is it? Really go over this. What is it? Be honest now. What is it in your heart or nature that is content with the legal obligations more than meeting the needs of others? What is it down inside of you that you're more satisfied with just doing the legal obligations of religion? Well, I do the right thing. And yet the needs of others you have no concern for. What is it down deep inside of you? What is within a Pharisee, for instance, in our passage, who can be content with ceremonies, can be content with religious activities, can be content with prayer, can be content with preaching, can be content with singing, can be content with meeting the legal, I'm okay because I... And yet the need of hungry people is of no concern at all. What is the nature? What is in your heart that would allow that to happen? And of course the answer is self. So that's the only answer that's the only answer I got in my life. See, religious activities satisfy my self-esteem, give me self-worth, make me feel, give me a superiority, make me feel I'm better than. While your needs, why would I care about that? See, I care about my needs. Expand the question, and let me ask this. What is it in your heart or in your nature? Second question. That gains satisfaction from doing religious ceremonies than embracing the hurts of your fellow man? What is it inside of you that's so wrapped up in yourself and gaining your own satisfaction out of your own religious activities and the needs of others? I was in a church, rather large size of a church. They had 40 in the choir. Now think about this. Just calculate this out with me. 40 in their choir. They had a Easter cantata. Good. And they packed the place out. They had 2 nights of the Easter cantata. And other churches came, and they packed the place out. They spent about $5,000 on the props for the Easter cantata. And they spent, if I remember, I may have the figures wrong, but there's 40 in the choir, and they practiced for 2 hours when they practiced, which meant that's 80 hours, right? And they practiced at least 6 weeks. So what would that be? 6 times 80, 480. 480 man-hours for an Easter cantata that brought people in their building for 2 nights. And if you go and say, well, how many people got converted? Well, none. How many homes were restored? Families, husbands and wives. Well, none. How many lives were? Well, none. So you spent $5,000 and 480 man-hours. Can you imagine what would happen if we would take 480 man-hours and hit this community back here banging on doors? 480 man hours? Do you get the picture? But see, we would rather have a nice program in here that makes us feel and spend 480 man hours making ourselves feel than to why is it that way? Well, it's this self-nature thing. So the Pharisees are in this position of looking at the disciples saying, hungry people, Sabbath day law, yes. Jesus is more interested in meeting the needs. It's expanded as you go then to verse 9. He's just giving these illustrations. Verse 9 down through verse 13. And this is the miraculous versus the status quo. Because in verse 9, you've got them going into the synagogue. And as they go into the synagogue, there's this man with the withered hand. And, of course, they're going to try to trap Jesus. And they know what Jesus is going to do with this guy. He's going to heal him. Because that's the way Jesus is. He can't help himself. So he's going to heal this guy. And, it's the Sabbath day again. It's the Sabbath day. So you got this Sabbath day thing going on. And the law of the Sabbath day, which does not allow any kind of medical technique to be performed on the Sabbath day unless it is a matter of life and death. And Jesus, of course, Jesus could have waited till Monday. Couldn't he? But what if it was your withered hand? I want to ask you a question. What is it that's in your heart or nature that is more content with routine than with interruptions of God's miracles? You know what would happen if God would hit this place tonight and begin to move upon our hearts and our lives, and people would become the altar, and there would be a movement, and we'd probably have to be here a couple hours, maybe even 3. On Saturday night, too. You know, my favorite TV show comes on at 9. See, I don't mind coming for a supper and a short, but let's not interfere. Hey, God, keep it cool. You know? Let's just do the normal thing. Let's just have normal church. Let's not have upset. Let's not have disturbance. Let's not have... when God starts doing miracles and that kind of thing, things get out of hand, and you just... I'm not sure we want that. You know? I'd rather have routine that doesn't... What is it inside my nature and my heart that would rather have just religious routine than God just coming and interrupting? And if he came and interrupted, he'd probably, oh, brother, talk to me. And I'm not sure I want that. So what could be in my nature, in my heart? And, of course, the answer is self. Let me give you another question on that. What is in your heart or nature that feels better about a man remaining handicapped than having your Sabbath day disturbed? See, that's the problem with people with needs. They disturb your life. You know? And I don't mind my life being disturbed if I make money. But, you know, get the contrast? See, here's a group of people that are all wrapped up in religion and all wrapped up in praying and memorizing Scripture and doing all, but they're so full of the nature of self that when Jesus comes along, who's full of the Spirit of God and spilling His life out for others, there's this overwhelming contrast. And I'm trying to see where I fit in all of this. What my nature is. And I know I can point to specific deeds. Well, I helped that old lady across the street. See, I can point to good Boy Scout. I can point to specific deeds, but see, this is not about the deed. This is about what spills out from inside of me. What I feel comfortable with, what I like, what gives me joy. See, that's what this is about. Oh, let me give you another. Ministry and solutions. Now, this takes you to verse 14 and 15, which is really interesting. Then the Pharisees went out and plotted against Him. So after these two Sabbath day scenes, you'll remember, the Pharisees in verse 14 go over here into their conference room, get around a big oak table, and what do? They plot murder. They plot against Him how they might destroy Him. So they're plotting murder. And at the same time that they're plotting murder, what is Jesus doing? Well, He withdrew from there. Great multitudes followed Him, and He healed them all. So over here you got the scene of Jesus healing everybody. Over here you got the scene of the Pharisees getting together plotting murder. So I want to ask you a question. What is in your heart or your nature that is more content with solutions to your problem than in ministry? See, we got a problem. Well, let's meet in the conference room with the oak table. Hey, there's a light in the hallway that's out. It just went out. So aggravating. Haven't got time to fix it before tomorrow. Just went out. So what should we do? Well, let's get around the oak table in the conference room. How are we going to solve our problem? What is it that's more comfortable, that I'm more comfortable in doing that? I'd rather spend my time doing that than ministering to the needs of others. What's inside of me? Let me give you another one. Another question. What's in your nature or your heart? Come on, think this through. What's in your nature or your heart that is more content with confronting organizational problems than embracing the needy around you? Organizational problems, yeah, budgets, man. Organizational problems, yeah. Who's going to be chairman of the board? Organizational problems, yeah. We're going to form a committee. What's the, over against pouring our lives out to meet the needy. While they're meeting in a conference room trying to solve their problem, which is Jesus, Jesus is out pouring His life out for all the multitude. Well, that kicks me in the teeth, folks. Because I spend a lot of time around the conference table trying to figure out how I'm going to solve my problems. Got a lot of them. Something happened to me, though. You know what happened to me? I became a pastor of a church. I had all these problems, became a pastor of a church, and I said, whoa, here's all these people with problems. Well, I'll put my problems on a shelf. I'll be back. Don't go away. I'll be back. And I began to look at other people's problems, and finally, when I got a moment to come back, about 95% of my problems had gone away. Isn't that interesting? You don't suppose I created my own problems? Because I was more interested in focusing on myself and how I feel and what my needs are than pouring my life out for others. And when I poured my life out for others, I found out I didn't have many needs. Wouldn't it be interesting if about, well, what percentage would you put on it? I don't know. Wouldn't it be interesting if about 95% of your problems just went away because you poured your life out for everybody else? Well, I don't feel satisfied. Well, quit focusing on that and spill your life out and see what happens to you. Well, I don't feel fulfilled. Oh, I don't feel like I have any purpose in life. Well, here's a good suggestion. Quit focusing on that and pour your life out. See what the Lord does in your life. So you got a choice. See, what's in you that wants to meet around a conference table? Well, it's self. What's in Jesus that just, Spirit of Jesus. Give me that Spirit. I'm sick of conference tables. I want the Spirit of Jesus. Well, let me give you this last. Means contrasted with self. Now, this is the passage we've got, which is verse 16 down through verse 21. And in this passage, you've got this, and we've walked through this structure, but I want to do it again. Because here's what I found out. As you move into this beautiful picture of Jesus given to us in this particular quotation from the Old Testament, Isaiah, the prophecy, as you look at it, you begin to discover that you can't do both. You can't be in the conference table around the oak table. You can't be in the conference around the oak table and pour your life out to the multitude at the same time. You can't do both. You can't do both. You got to choose. You can't focus on yourself and meet the needs of others at the same time. You can't do that. That they contradict each other so strongly that they can't be meshed together. You cannot do both. And as you flow into this passage, isn't it interesting that after he gets done with this beautiful description in verse 18, he comes to this passage, which is the passage we're trying to deal with, which is verse 19. He will not quarrel nor cry out. That Jesus does not dispute, he does not quarrel, he does not defend oneself. He does not fight. Because you cannot quarrel and minister at the same time. For instance, if we want to win this down, we can't sit around and bicker. Because one nullifies the other. Absolutely nullifies the other. There's no way that can be done. You cannot quarrel and win your world at the same time. If you don't like the idea of the community and the church, you can't quarrel at home and win your next door neighbor. Or you can't quarrel at home and win your kids. Can't do that. It won't happen. There's no way to bring it together. Because those two, see, that's what the passage is all about. He will not quarrel. Why? Because he's ministering. In fact, as you begin to walk through it, look at verse 18. You remember the progression of this. He starts out with, "Behold my servant whom I have chosen." That's the appointment. Jesus has been appointed. He's been appointed as servant, whom I have chosen. So God the Father, the Trinity God, has chosen Jesus to pour his life out through a cross, win a world. So Jesus has been chosen. Well, what if Jesus wants to quarrel? And then he can't be chosen. Because it cancels it. See, you can't be the servant and pour your life out for your world. You can't be chosen and know the overwhelming appointment. Oh, man, if I could just know that God has called me and giving me great direction. Oh, God has called you and is giving you great direction. Has destiny for your life. There isn't any question about that. But you see, what nullifies that? Well, quarreling, disputing, defending oneself. Focus on. See, you can't be around the conference table around the oak table in the conference room and quarrel and minister to your world at the same time. See, they nullify each other. Oh, got to hurry. Look on. He says, my beloved. So that's the adored. So Jesus is not only appointed, as he describes him, but he's adored, remember? But you see, the adoring thing, it's the feeling of belonging. I'm the beloved. See, you can't have that feeling and quarrel. Nullifies it. Jesus has this overwhelming sense. I'm loved by the Father. But you know what happens to that feeling? Think about it. Every time you've lost your temper and been in a fit and you're yelling at the top of your lungs and you're just defending and arguing, and do you have these warm feelings inside of how loved you are? Well, no, you don't. It ruins it. Doesn't it? Just ruins all that. So if you're wanting to build a home, if you're wanting to build a church, if you're wanting to build a life that's full of love and passion and adored and feelings of belonging and pulling people in, then argument is out of the question. See, that can't. Whoa. And it isn't just, I won't argue. No, it's what produces argument, which is self. So we're back to the nature. See, keep it straight. It's the nature of self that produces the argument that nullifies the warmth, the I belong. Go to the next one. He says, beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. That's the approved. So Jesus is appointed, he's adored, and he's approved. And we've talked about this. And the approval, of course, is an inward disposition in the part of God the Father who wants the best for you. So God the Father wants the best for Jesus. It isn't that Jesus is out here trying to please the Father. It's that the Father has this disposition of looking upon Jesus with this feeling of, I want the best. I'm pulling for you. I'm for your good. But you know what destroys that? Arguing. Quarreling. Because the minute Jesus breaks into quarreling, you know what happens? He doesn't feel that approval. He doesn't feel that, the Father is for me. You get the idea, probably he's against me now. Come on, think it through. You've just lost your temper. You're just yelling at the top of your lungs. You're just, you're squabbling. All of the feeling of the person I'm arguing with is for me. The person I'm arguing with is trying to help me. You don't feel that from them anymore, do you? That kills all of that. So the feeling of belonging and the feeling of, I'm accepted, and the feeling. And do you realize that a person could look you in the eye and have the best intent towards you, want everything that's good for you, and be expressing to you the pure will of God, and you could look at it as if it was disdain. You could look at it with disdain. You could look at it as if it's devilish. You could look at it as they're against me. You could feel like why do you feel that way? When they're for you, they're trying to help you. They want the best for you, but you feel they're against you. Why do you feel that? Because you're quarreling. And quarreling nullifies it. So all but God. See, when I'm quarreling and arguing, then I get the feeling He doesn't care. Yes, He does. What does He have to do to prove it to you? But you don't feel that when you're quarreling. Nullifies it. Let me give you one more. You got the appointed, the adored, and the approved. Here comes the anointed. I will put my spirit, verse 18, I will put my spirit upon him. Woo! The Father says, whoa, I love Jesus so much I just can't keep my hands off of him. I'm just going to put my spirit all over him. That's what I'm going to do. Try quarreling and see how much of the Spirit you feel. Kills it, man. So all the flow of God in my life that I want, that's the chapter. That's the chapter. And it isn't quarreling. It's the nature that produces the quarrel. In the name of Jesus, folks, I want God to go after the nature of quarreling. Whatever's inside of me that's got to defend myself and whatever's inside of me that, well, they're not going to, whatever's inside of me that I have to have my, whatever's inside of me that I demand my rights, whatever's inside of me that just, that's killing every good thing that's coming to my life. I want that gone, man. I want that gone. Because I want to know the love of the Father. I want to, oh, He does approve of me. He is after my best. Oh, I am adored by Him. I want to feel that. I want to, hey, I do belong, man. Hey, He does care. He has chosen me. I do have destiny. But quarreling kills that. It's the nature. So you got a choice tonight. Go to the conference room. We got one back here. Oak table. Hey, plot murder. Destroy. Whatever you want to do. Or you could be with Jesus. Minister to the multitudes. Oh, Jesus. I don't know what you need to do in me tonight, but I'm open. I don't know how you need to change me, Jesus, but here I am. I don't come telling you or dictating tonight. I come surrendering, yielding, desiring, wanting. Whatever you want to do. No defenses. No holdouts. No cover-up. Take the quarrel out of me, will you? In the name of Jesus, take the quarrel out of me. And give me nothing but the Spirit of Jesus that would spill out of me to meet the need of my world. Heads are bowed. Would you pray that prayer with me? Would you ask for Him to do that in you? Would you risk Him changing your nature? Would you relinquish your right to defend yourself? That He might flow within arm's reach of your life, my brother, my sister. Within arm's reach of your life, there's a multitude of hurting people. You have no time to sit around an oak table in a conference room arguing. It will destroy your ministry, the purpose that God has chosen you for. It will destroy the sense and warmth of belonging to Him. It will eliminate any awareness of being His and chosen. Isolate you. Ruin your family. Would you kneel with me tonight? Cry out to Him for Him to change the depth of our hearts. Altars open. Be obedient. Be obedient.